Hi guys, it's Mike from Eldorado Guitars, and I'm coming at you today with a video about why I am moving on from this, the Universal Audio aux box. Let's get to it. Okay guys, so this is my Universal Audio aux box. I've had this since 2021, early 2021, and I just sold it on Reverb. I need to go mail it actually, so it's on its way to its new home. But I wanted to cover just a few pros and cons of the aux box and explain my story about it, because I made a video a really long time ago when I got the aux box talking about it, and I figured I would just make a second video to close the loop. So first of all, some pros of the aux box. So I think probably the biggest pro that I can think of for the aux box is that it's really easy to use and it's great for beginners. If you're a beginner and you just want to plug your amp into something and have a bunch of great sounds automatically on tap, where you have to do very little to make things sound good, the aux is great for that. Another pro of the aux box is the effects. So you've got access to some great effects in the aux box that are frankly just as good as the UA plugins that you pay hundreds of dollars for to use in your digital audio workstation, right? You've got your limiter compressor, you've got a digital delay, and you've got a plate reverb. And that's really, you can do a lot with that. But you don't need to spend a lot of extra money on effects. And of course, you don't have to use them at all. If you want to use a pedal or something, you can. Another pro of the aux box is it has a great app. The app is really intuitive to use. It's very simple, very straightforward. You can actually see the cabinet in the room. You can see when you change microphones, it moves them around. When you put a carpet in it, it puts a carpet in it, right? It's very intuitive and very simple to use. It's just got little faders, little EQ buttons. Very easy, and they have a lot of great presets already in the aux box, so that if you don't want to spend a lot of time tweaking presets, you really don't have to. That said, you can go pretty far down the rabbit hole making adjustments to things, and they make it really easy to do that in the app. So the app is great. One thing I do wish they had in the app was phone support. They still only have computer and tablet, which seems a little strange, but otherwise the app itself is great. One final pro of the aux box is that you can use it as an in-the-room attenuator. So you can run your tube amp into the aux box and then run your aux box into a speaker cabinet and attenuate your signal in the room so that you can crank your amp and then bring the total volume down. I'll talk more about that in the cons section because there's definitely some negatives with that, but it is a great simple attenuator if you're just looking for a really easy solution to crank your plexi or whatever and then bring down the total volume. And finally, the last pro is really just that the aux box sounds great. I mean, it sounds great. It's so easy to use. You plug and play, it sounds awesome. So it takes all the guesswork out of miking a speaker cabinet or having to keep a bunch of speaker cabinets around your house or whatever. So it just sounds really great, very simple to use, beautiful for beginners that are just getting into taking your amp and running it into a load box and trying to record on your computer. Okay, now some cons about the aux box. So realistically, there's a lot of reasons I chose to move on from the aux box, but the biggest one can be summed up like this. The aux box is like an iPhone. An iPhone is what they call a walled garden, which means all your apps in your iPhone have to go through Apple's App Store and all of the testing and vetting that the App Store does before they'll let you download them on your phone. Now, the good thing about that is that there's very few issues with apps. They all work great. You get away from spammy apps. They function on your iPhone. They work on a lot of legacy iPhones, all this stuff, right? But the bad news is that if you want an app that's outside that App Store, you have no access. You're stuck in Apple's walled garden. The aux box is like that. You're stuck in the aux box with a lot of things. You're stuck with their speaker cabinets, you're stuck with their emulations, you're stuck with their effects. You're kind of stuck with a lot of the things that are in there, and you can't really modify all that much. I'll give you a really simple example. There are only two microphone choices in the aux box, on axis and off axis. What does that mean? I don't really know because they don't explain anywhere, right? Is on axis, is that directly on the dust cap, like in the center? When they say off axis, is that where the dust cap meets the cone, or is it further off the cone? We don't really know. So that's a great example of how you're kind of stuck in this walled garden. So if you're a beginner, it's going to be great for you because it's kind of idiot proof, right? On or off. But when you get to a level like I'm at where you're really trying to do professional recording, it's very limiting because you only have 2 positions for a microphone. And if you don't know, positioning your microphone is one of the biggest things you can do to affect your guitar sound. So this kind of stuff is pretty important, and being in a walled garden like the Oxbox can be really limiting. Another aspect of the walled garden is you're kind of stuck with UA's cabs and mics. So if you want to use a different kind of microphone from outside the walled garden, you can't. If you want to use a speaker type that's like, let's say you want a Creamback 65M, it's not in the Oxbox, no access, can't use it, right? You can't go download it from somewhere. You can't go find somebody on the internet who's done it. It literally does not exist. Because remember, walled garden. So you're really limited in your speaker choices. And I'm going to tie this to another con, which is the lack of updates from Universal Audio. So as far as I know, Universal Audio's only issued 1 update to the speaker cabinets, and that was to add V30 cabinets. They added a Marshall V30 and a Mesa V30 because apparently at launch they didn't include those cabinets in the Oxbox, which frankly seems very puzzling. But at the end of the day, there's only been 1 update. So if you're sitting around thinking, oh, hey, maybe they'll put in an M65 Creamback, it's not going to happen because they haven't issued an update in 4 years. And earlier this year, they said that they were stopping support for the Oxbox. That doesn't mean product support. I mean, they're stopping development. They're not developing any new speakers, microphones, no more updates for the Aux. So you really, truly are limited in that walled garden. Another major issue I had with the Aux is connection issues. The app is kind of clunky at times. The Oxbox doesn't connect to your Wi-Fi at times. It just forgets it. You have to go in and reset it up. Sometimes it remembers that it's in there, sometimes it doesn't. It's just really puzzling, and it happens very randomly. I don't know. It's a thing that's well known. If you go look it up on Reddit or on the UA support forums, you'll see that it's very well known that there's a lot of connection problems. And I think people are also saying that there's connection problems with the pedal version of the Oxbox. So something is going awry here, and I don't really know what it is, but connection issues are a major problem. Another problem I had with the Aux, and this happened to me 3 times over the 4 years that I owned it, is there would be a mysterious clicking sound in the audio. Clicking, not clipping. Clicking. So I would play and you would hear the guitar and then you'd hear these little like and it wasn't like steady, it wasn't rhythmic or anything like that. It was very random and it had nothing to do with how hard I was hitting the guitar, you know, like it wasn't like the signal clipping or the front of the amp clipping or something. It's something in the Oxbox. And when I went and researched this, again, this was a commonly known issue. And UA's fix for this is to reset your Oxbox to factory settings. When you do that, you lose all the presets that you made. So if you're like me and you spent a lot of time tweaking your presets, tweaking your EQs, the right cabinets, the right microphones, you know, setting up your delay, just how you like it, and then you get this clicking bug, then you have to reset your Oxbox to factory settings and you lose everything. And there's absolutely no way to recover it. You can't save a backup file, you can't save a config file, you can't export them to something, you can't do anything. Also, resetting to factory settings is actually kind of hard. It took me several tries to be able to do it. Like I followed the instructions to the T, and sometimes it just didn't reset. So it was a really strange and problematic process, and it was really frustrating to lose my settings 3 times. The second time I lost my settings, Universal Audio actually took my Oxbox back, which was great. They gave me an RMA number and I sent it back to them. They actually sent me a brand new Oxbox. So that was really cool of them. But then with the new box, I still had that problem one time and had to, again, wipe everything and lose everything, which just makes using it, but between that and the connection issues, it really makes using it very frustrating sometimes. Another con of the Oxbox is that there's no synergy between the Oxbox and other Universal Audio products. Let me give you an example. So the advantage of having a Universal Audio interface, I have an Apollo Twin Quad X. The advantage of having that interface is that when you use Universal Audio's native plugins, it gives you 0 latency real-time monitoring. So what that means, it's a fancy way of saying I can put a lot of plugins and turn them on, and there's no latency through the monitors, the studio monitors. So I can play and I can hear the effect that I'm doing, the plugin that I'm doing in real time. So that's a really powerful synergy and a really powerful reason to keep adding to your UA universe. The Auxbox, by comparison, doesn't have anything like that. It doesn't do anything with your interface. It doesn't do anything with UA Luna. It doesn't do anything with plugins. I think they could have gone in some really cool directions there. They could have allowed you to maybe like swap the effects in the Auxbox in and out with plugins for Universal Audio that you already own. Maybe they could do something where it connects directly to your interface and offers maybe more cabs through the interface or something. I just feel like there was a lot of opportunity there that was wasted. Okay, and one final con that I want to bring up that I talked about in the Pro section is the in-the-room attenuation. So while the Auxbox is really good in terms of a simple attenuator, if you're just looking for a very easy solution, it doesn't sound that great. You only have 5 clicking options for volume, so one might be too quiet and one might be too loud. There's also no way to change any of the attenuation options, like you can't raise the treble because it squashed the treble. It's kind of kooky, and I really wish that instead of having an in-the-room attenuator, they did something like different impedance curves that you could click through, like a 1x12, 2x12, 4x12, and maybe like a 1x10 and a 1x15 or something, right? And that would have been, I think, a much better use of that type of knob on the front than having an in-the-room attenuator that really is just okay for basic playing, but not really that useful in a professional environment. Okay, so you're probably like, Mike, if you're getting rid of your Auxbox, what are you moving to? So I've moved to a completely different setup where the Auxbox is kind of superfluous for me now. I just don't need it. So what I'm doing is I'm running my amps directly into my Fryette Power Station. I'm putting the power station into bypass mode. The reason I'm doing that is because A, I don't need any actual sound in the room, and B, I watched several YouTube videos where the power station in bypass mode is actually the most neutral reactive load on the market in terms of it doesn't color your sound. I just felt that that was much better than the aux, which does have some coloring, although it's minor. Or, if you've got something like a 2Notes, or there were other ones like the Palmer Soaker and stuff that really affect your sound a lot more. So the Fryette Power Station allows me to just keep it completely flat. So I'm going amp into the power station on bypass mode. Then I'm going into the back of my Fractal Axe-Fx 3, which has turned out to be an amazing tool. I'm going to do another video on that. What can't this thing do for 1,500 bucks? It's amazing. But anyhow, I'm running into the back of my Fractal Axe-Fx 3, and then I'm using the IR loader in the Axe-Fx. I'm using the effects in the Axe-Fx. I'm using the compressors, the multi-band compressors, the yada 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 in the Axe-Fx, and then I'm going from Axe-Fx into my audio interface. So my full signal chain now is my amp into the power station on bypass into the Fractal Axe-Fx 3 and then into my Universal Audio Apollo Twin Quad. And then I've been using a lot of IRs from Ownhammer, York Audio. I mean, I've been just loading up on IRs, and the results I'm getting are amazing. To be completely honest, I think they're better than the Auxbox. And the first video I did with this setup was the Alice in Chains Snorkeler amp down here. I think the title of the video was checking out the new Bogner Snorkeler. I mean, you can go listen to the audio that I got on that. The guitar sounds are awesome. They're frankly better than anything I've ever done with the aux. So it's just worked out a lot better for me. It sounds a lot better. I think the feel is better. I love having access to the Axe-Fx effects instead of being limited to the Universal Audio effects. I love the flat impedance curve of the Fryette Power Station. I mean, it's just been a far better setup for me. And so that's why I'm moving on from the Auxbox. So the Universal Audio Auxbox is still a great tool. I don't think that it's a bad purchase, especially if you're buying one of these used. I sold this one for $800, so that's a great deal for whoever picked it up. And if you're new to attenuators and reactive loads and amp simulation and speaker simulation, this is going to be a great unit. But I feel like at the end of the day, if I had to sum the aux up, it's really just it's a good unit, but it could have been an exceptional unit. And the reason it's not is because of Universal Audio. It seems like they released a very beta product here, and then they had a lot of high hopes for it, right? Like adding more speaker cabinets and microphones, using the foot switch thing on the back here, using the USB outs on the back here. For example, another thing they should have done is include XLR outputs back here, and they didn't, right? So it just seems like it kind of got so close to being an exceptional product, and then UA just kind of like gave up on it, which is pretty frustrating. So that's just another reason why I'm moving on from it. Okay guys, so that's kind of my pros and cons and why I'm moving on from the UA Auxbox to a different setup. I'd love to hear your experiences with the Auxbox if you've had one or currently have one. I'd love to hear your experience with other setups. If you think that there's other setups I should try or check out, I'd love to hear about that. And of course, please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you like this content, because it really does help me out. Thanks guys, and have a good rest of your week, and happy Thanksgiving.